So we discussed in our previous lecture, we discussed about active and passive transformations in Informatica. Now we are going to discuss about all the transformations in Informatica one by one,
Okay.
all the important transformations in Informatica.
Okay.
So the first one we'll be discussing is aggregator transformation in Informatica. Write down the heading aggregator transformation. First of all, write down that aggregator transformation is an active as well as an connected transformation. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
which is used to perform calculations such as sums, averages, counts on groups of data.
Uh-huh.
So write it down that aggregation transformation is an active and connected transformation which is used to perform aggregate operations on data. Written? So what aggregator does is, when we call aggregator, the integration service stores the data group and raw data in aggregate cache.
Say again.
So uh, when we perform aggregation operation, the integration service stores the data group and the rows of data in aggregate cache.
Okay.
Now the aggregator transformation provides more advantages than SQL. So let's write down the steps how to create an aggregator transformation. I wish I would have Informatica installed on my PC, but I don't. So let's write down the definition. So just write down the steps.
Mm-hmm.
One moment. Okay. So the steps of creating aggregator transformation. Step 1, go to Mapping Designer. In Mapping Designer, we have toolbar. In toolbar, we'll click on transformations
Mm-hmm.
and we'll click on create. When we'll click on create, we'll select from a list of transformations the aggregator and we'll enter the name for that transformation. So in this case, we'll enter the name like AGR underscore whatever name we want. That's the naming
Okay.
standard. And once we are done with it, we will click on done. It will create a aggregation transformation without any ports. To create ports, we'll drag and drop the ports into our incoming transformations into aggregator,
Mm-hmm.
or we will manually create the ports inside our aggregator.
Uh-huh.
So let me search for aggregator here in my PDF. So this is how my aggregation transformation looks like. These are the pods that I'm gonna create.
Mm-hmm.
Out of these pods, we are gonna select the group of pods or a single pod on which we want to group by.
Group by yes.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so this is how it will be done. Now, how can we configure a aggregator transformation? There are some properties in aggregator transformation that we want to specify. So the first one is
Mm-hmm.
we want to decide the aggregator cache, that how much cache we want to have for a particular aggregator. Let's say I have 10 GBs of data coming from my source. So in my aggregator cache, I will define a value greater than or equal to 10 GB. Okay. So the
Mm-hmm.
integration service, what integration service does is it stores the group values in index cache and the raw data in data cache. Okay,
Okay.
there is index cache and data cache. Write it down. So it is in very much detail, but you don't need to remember it. I'll tell you the things that you need to remember. You need to remember that one or more pods can be selected as group by. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Now, after we have selected our group by pod and our aggregator cache, we need to select our aggregate expression. We can enter expressions in output pods or variable pods. Just like we create our pods in our expression, the same thing we can do in aggregator also. We can
Okay.
create output or variable pods and perform calculations in that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the role of this group by port, which is highlighted here, it tails integration service. One moment, is it getting recorded? Yeah, it is. So that group by port will tail integration service that how we want to create groups. We can configure our inputs, outputs, or our variable ports for that group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
So Mirza, it is not necessary that we can only group by based on whatever is coming from source. We can calculate a value in our aggregation in our aggregator port, and we can choose to group by on that also.
Okay.
Now, in order to optimize a aggregator, we need to provide it with sorted input. एग्रीगेटर को हम sorted input provide करेंगे तो उसके लिए group by करना आसान होगा. Okay.
Okay.
So we can just there is an option in this properties tab. You can see my mouse.
Uh-huh.
There is an option in this properties tab where we can specify that the input that we are passing to aggregator is sorted.
Okay.
But before checking that port, we need to make sure that the input is actually sorted, either by using a sorter or providing the sorted data through source qualifier itself.
Okay.
Now there are some properties of aggregator transformation. Write them down.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, just if an interviewer asks you, you should have it written on your pen on your paper. So three properties are there: cache directory, tracing level, and sorted input. We already talked about sorted input. So cache directory is the integration service which is creating index and data cache files. So we can specify the cache directory also, that on which Unix location or wherever our server is installed, where the index cache and data cache will be prepared. And the amount of detail displayed in session log for aggregator transformation is called tracing level. We can also
Tracing level. Tracing level used for what?
tracing level is nothing but amount of details which are displayed in our session log. When our session gets succeeded or failed, we check our session log, right?
Yes.
So in session log, we see certain amount of details. So tracing level is nothing but the amount of details displayed in that session log.
Okay.
Now it is given a default value by default. We don't need to change it, but we need to know what is stored in there.
Okay.
Aggregated data cache size we already talked about. Whatever data we are fetching, we are passing through aggregator, we need to store it in a cache. So the default size goes around 2 million bytes. 2 million bytes means 2000 KB or 2 MB. And there is a default index cache size also, which is half of data cache size. 1 million bytes, okay?
Okay.
We can also define the scope of this transformation. It specifies how the integration service applies to the transformation logic to incoming data. Okay.
Okay.
You are clear about group by ports. Let's talk some little more about them. So in group by ports, we are specifying that on which ports we want to group by. Internally, what happens is integration service performs aggregate calculations and produces one row for each group. Let's say I'm grouping by name, so corresponding to all the same kind of names, the integration service will prepare one row for each group. We'll see it with example also.
Okay.
Just note it down for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't specify any group by port, it will by default return one row for all input ports. It will group by everything and it will return the distinct values. So by default, the integration service returns the last rows received for a particular group. Okay.
Okay.
So let's say I have checked this and I am passing this data afterwards. So what integration service will do? It will return the last row corresponding to each group. Okay.
Okay.
But we can change it using first or last function. Okay.
How?
Uh, there is a option in properties in
Okay.
properties tab. We'll see it when we will have Informatica installed. Okay.
Okay.
So let's talk about what we can do in aggregate expressions. We can calculate, write down. We can calculate average, count, first. You are writing
Mm-hmm.
average, count, first, last, max, mean, mode, median, and standard deviation also. All the statistical functions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In our variables, we can also specify some conditional clauses. So we can also reduce the number of rows processed by an aggregator. So when we discuss that group by expression, sorry, when we discuss group by in SQL, I talked about the having clause.
Yes.
So it works in similar fashion.
Okay.
We can also have nested aggregate functions, means we can call another aggregate function inside a aggregate function. For example, I am having sales for a particular day. So I can calculate sum of sales for a particular day. Now corresponding to all the days I am interested in calculating maximum of sales. So I'll write the function like max of sum of sales.
Okay.
Okay, like this. Max of sum of sales. Okay, so far everything is clear.
Uh-huh.
We can also perform incremental aggregation using this aggregator transformation. So when we create a session that includes a aggregator transformation, we can enable this session option. It's a session option to perform incremental aggregation.
Okay.
So when integration service performs incremental aggregation, it passes source data through the mapping and uses historical cache data to perform aggregation calculation. Suppose in your cache corresponding to ID equal to 10, some 1000 rows are already stored and you are passing 2000 more rows. So the aggregation will be performed on 3000 rows. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So that's about the aggregator. Now let's look at the example. So this is my table.
Mm-hmm.
Let's suppose I want to find out the total. Let me add one more column, amount. I'm just putting random values. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I want to find out corresponding to my item name equal to Apple, what is the total amount that is sold? So I'll group by name and I'll filter on Apple. The total amount will be 1 plus 2 equal to 3.
Yes.
So I'll specify it like this, sum of amount. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you'll do sum of amount corresponding to Apple, you are gonna get 3. Okay.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Now let's perform the similar operation for something else. I'm selecting all of them. I'm interested in finding the total amount which is sold corresponding to the type category fruits. So I'll group by type. In my group by, I'll make type as my group by port. So now grouping is done on type. Now I am interested
Yes.
in sum of total amount sold. So I can calculate it in aggregator. The sum of total amount sold will be 9. Now I am interested in finding out the total money that I made using selling that amount. So what I can do is I can multiply it from that particular price of that item. Okay,
Okay.
equal to sum of price multiplied by amount for this. Okay, it is not working out here, but it works in aggregator. We can calculate the sum of price multiplied by amount also. We'll create a variable port in which we will calculate price multiplied by amount, and then we will select our group by port as type. So that sum of amount will be calculated corresponding to the particular types. Since we are grouping on type, let's see the other combinations also. So let me make it a proper example. So it will be price multiplied by amount. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the money I made. I'm renaming this column as revenue. So what is the total of revenue? How can I calculate it?
Sum of revenue.
Sum of revenues corresponding to particular type.
Uh-huh.
So I made $135 by selling fruits. Similarly, if I'll select different types, like if I'll select cosmetics, I can perform the similar kind of operation on that also. So
Yes.
corresponding to cosmetics, I made $135. How much I made on medicines? $135. Sum of all the revenues corresponding to medicines. So I made $539 corresponding to medicines.
Mm-hmm.
So these kind of operations I can perform using aggregator. I can also perform an average. You have written down the operations that I told you.
Yes.
Sum, count, first, last, max, median, mod,
Uh-huh.
and standard deviation also. I can do all these things in an aggregator. It might not come clear to you right now. You can listen to this video again and again and you can relate to it, okay? You can take some more examples on your own and you can try performing aggregation operations on them. Okay. And there can also be some non-conditional clauses, like if sum is less than $20, then display 0. Let's say you are working in a big business and anything which is less than $20 is immaterial to you. So you'll mention it as a condition that make that revenue as 0.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's move to the next transformation, which is expression. Again, we discussed yesterday that expression transformation is a connected and passive transformation,
Yes.
which is used to calculate values in a single row.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Expression behaves like select without where. So examples of calculations can be like concatenating first name and last name, summing up the rental allowance and fuel allowance corresponding to an employee, converting the strings into dates. You remember that practice session we had,
Yes.
converting
Yes.
strings into dates?
Uh-huh.
We can do that in
Yes.
expression. So write down the steps for creating an expression transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be more relevant if I'll show you the picture here also. No. Function home. Page down. So Mirza, this is very good book. Read it out.
Yes. I study reading
You started reading it.
last night. Yes.
Online database connectivity is the full form of ODBC, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Why?
That that was for
I'm
me.
wrong?
No, no,
Huh?
no. You were not. I was just revising myself. So expression मिल गया. So Mirza, these are the steps of creating an expression transformations. Go to mapping designer, create a new mapping, open an existing mapping, click on the transformations, click on create, select the transformation as expression, enter the name, save it, and done.
Yeah.
Same as aggregator. These are the steps these are the steps that we follow. Now once this expression transformation has created, either we can drag and drop the rows from source qualifier on any previous transformation or previous expression to this expression, or we can manually specify the ports here, just like we did in case of aggregator. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me copy and paste this example over there also. Let's suppose this is the data I am getting in expression transformation. So in expression transformation, I can create a variable called revenue in which I can multiply price by amount and calculate the values. Okay. I'll also try learning these functions in Excel like I did. Okay, let's talk about Informatica for now. Forget about Excel. So you are clear with the steps that we need to take while creating an expression transformation. So once we have created an expression transformation, we can add the expressions either in variable port or output port. The input ports are fixed. Okay.
Okay.
We can create a variable or output port in the expression transformation by just opening the expression transformation and clicking on this sign, which we have here. Let me show you. No. Okay, this is just talking about creating a transformation. Let us move ahead. You can read the definitions from this page also. This is page number 72. Write it down. Page number 70 to 70. This one. Page number 74. No. This is talking about SCD. Don't do that. So I will dictate the definition and you can write it down. Okay.
Okay.
So just write down that expression transformation is connected in passive transformation. It is used to calculate values in a single row. Now, what if we need to create components or tabs in a expression transformation? What are the different components or tabs we have in expression transformation? So in transformation port, we can enter the name and description of a particular transformation. This is in general, I'm talking about any transformation.
Yes.
In ports, we can just click on create new ports, that square sign which looks like this, looks like this. No, we don't have it here. Line style, this, which looks like this, kind of. Okay,
Yeah.
we can click on it and create new ports. In properties tab of any transformation, we can configuration the tracing level. What was the tracing level? The amount of details that we see in our session log.
Yes.
And we can also specify other metadata extensions. What is metadata? Data about data.
Data. Yes.
So we can specify extension name, data type, precision, value. We can also create reusable metadata extensions. Okay.
Okay.
So in expression transformation, we have these configurable items like port name, write it down, port name, data type, precision and scale, port type, and the expression value. So in port name, we can enter the name for a particular port of an expression. In data type, we can select data type of the port that we specified. In precision and scale, we can select precision and scale for that particular port name that we specified of that particular data type. You are clear about precision and scale. If not, you
Uh-huh.
can revise our lecture 1.
No. Yes. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can, in expression, we will be specifying our port type also. Port can be input, output, or variable. So there are 4 combinations: input port, input slash output port, or a variable port.
Mm-hmm.
Variable port cannot be treated as a output port.
Yeah.
One tricky interview question. And in expression, we will write values like, this. Okay.
Okay.
So that's about expression transformation. Should we take some example? Uh,
Actually,
you
basically
can
the
you
thing.
can write down some assignments.
Okay.
So you can create a customer table in which you will have customer names and customer salary. You have to calculate the income tax of a customer. So corresponding to US norms, you will be paying 30% of your income as tax. So you will be creating a variable pot in which you will be calculating your income tax by calculating the 30% of the salary of that particular customer, particular employee. Okay.
Say again.
So the assignment is calculate
Mhm.
income tax for an employee. So in this example, you will be creating an employee table. You will be specifying employee name and employee salary.
Okay.
That will be your source. And you will create an expression transformation in which you will be calculating the income tax corresponding to that particular employee. The taxation rate is 30%.
Okay.
Okay, do this assignment on your Informatica. Or you can try creating a mapping in which you will be concatenating first name and last name of an employee. Okay,
Okay.
these are some examples of expression. Now let's talk about filter transformation. Mirza, stop me whenever it is too much for you. Okay,
Okay.
so I'll try to cover as much as possible today. अच्छा, filter transformation active है या passive?
Filter is active
Why?
because we can sort out the row or data.
We can filter out rows, right?
Rows. Yes.
So what are the conditions for active transformation? Either it is changing the number of rows, changing the transaction boundary, or changing the row type.
Yes.
So the first condition matches here, so it is a active transformation. Is it connected or unconnected?
Connected.
It is connected transformation, that's right. So write down the filter transformation is used to filter out rows in a mapping. It can change the number of rows passed through it, so it is an active transformation. We have to specify a filter condition in a filter transformation.
Okay.
On what condition we want to filter upon. Let's take the same example. Let me copy it. So in filter transformation, we can specify that we only want to take the type fruits ahead. So we can put a filter like this, and only this many rows will be passed through it. Okay?
Yeah.
So filter works pretty much the same as it works in Excel. Out of the fruits, we want to specify that we only want bananas to be taken out. So we can specify that also. Okay?
Okay.
Let's try putting a filter on medicines. We can do that. Or what if we don't want to take the medicines ahead. We just want cosmetics, fruits and stationery. We can do that. Okay?
Uh-huh.
So try it out in Informatica. How can we create a filter transformation? What are the steps to create? Same steps as we took in
Yes.
expression and aggregator.
Yes.
Go to toolbar, click on transformation, create, select filter transformation, enter a name, click done, and voila, you have your filter transformation. So to configure a filter transformation, we'll go to the properties tab and we will specify our filter conditions over there. And after we have written our filter conditions, Mirza, we will always validate our filter transformation expression. Okay?
Mhm.
The same activity we will do in case of expression also. We'll always be validating that our particular transformation that we have created is valid. What all details we can specify in a filter transformation? Ports, properties, and metadata extensions. Same definition as before.
Uh-huh.
Ports are any new ports. Properties are properties of a particular transformation. In this case, properties of filter condition. We can also define the tracing levels. What are tracing levels? The amount of information that we are seeing in our session log.
Section log.
And same as expression and aggregator, we can specify port name, data type, precision and scale, and the port type, whether it is input or output. Now there are some performance tuning tips in filter transformation. Write them down.
Okay.
The first tip is we'll be using our filter transformation as close as possible to our source and targets. We
For
are
the
use the filter transformation as close as possible to all our sources instead of targets. Keep them as far as possible from targets and as close as possible to sources. अगर source पर ही आपको पता है कि you are only interested in type fruit, so you don't need to process the data corresponding to stationery and medicines.
give me a minute, okay? Please.
Sure. Second performance tip is if our sources are relational, we'll use the filter in source qualifier itself. We'll not use filter transformation at all. This will reduce the number of rows to be read from source. Okay. Write a note.
Okay.
All the input ports in filter transformation must come from a single transformation.
All the input ports.
From to a filter transformation must come from a single transformation. We cannot connect multiple sources to same filter transformation. What is the reason? Since we are filtering down the rows in filter transformation, it is necessary that all our rows are coming from a single transformation. Done?
What do you mean by single transformation?
Let's say I have two expressions coming from my two data sources, customer.txt and customer details. So I cannot put data from both the transformation in a single filter transformation specifying that I only want data corresponding to mass market customers. What I'll be
Okay.
doing, I will be joining the data in these two transformation and then passing the data from joiner to this filter.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. In that case, can I use router?
Router is to make groups. If we want to specify that corresponding to fruits, I want to pass the data in separate stream. Corresponding to medicines, I want to pass the data in separate stream. And corresponding to cosmetics, I want to pass the data in separate stream. So that activity can be done using router.
Okay.
Again, if and only if we only want data corresponding to a given group, then only we are going to use filter transformation to filter out the data.
Okay.
Yes, we can achieve filter transformation using router also, but that's not the optimized way. Some example, let's say I want to choose only those commodities which are having revenue more than $100. We can also do this using filter and aggregator combination. In aggregator, we will be aggregating based on the type of commodity. We'll calculate the summation of revenue that we got from each commodity, and we will use filter transformation to filter out all the data which is generating revenue less than $100.
Okay.
One example this is. In case of a employee table, we can choose the employees which are having salary greater than 100,000. That's another example. Okay.
Okay.
So Mirza, we will stop here.
Okay.
Okay.